Part 2. Into Action. The three core functions. Referring to our diagram of the general theory of the translation company, we see that the LSP is surrounded by market influencers and supported by support activities. The core functions performed by the LSP are at the center of the diagram. The main difference between the support activities and the core functions in the middle is very simple. Both are necessary activities that need to be carried out by the LSP, but the core functions in the middle represent the LSP's core competencies that add value to the language services value chain. It is through these core functions that an LSP is going to develop a meaningful differentiation between themselves and their competition. Figure 16 shows the core functions and the values they enable, a diagram of the general theory of the translation company. This is not to downplay the importance of the market influencer evaluation or support activities. Without the former, you will not know the challenges and opportunities and will struggle to find a niche in the industry. Without the latter, you will not be able to effectively deliver on your core functions. This book intentionally focuses on the core functions last, even though they are certainly the most exciting to talk about. We could have written an entire book just about these. However, while it is tempting to focus only on the core functions, this would be a backwards way of approaching the industry. Rather than thinking of the core functions as being more important than the market influencer evaluation or support activities, it would be more useful to think of the core competencies as the result of them. We hope that one of the key takeaways from this book will be for the LSP readers who will walk away feeling more empowered to attain success. As we have already seen, this is a complex and ever-changing industry, and it is tempting to fall into despair and focus on factors that you don't have any control over. This is the chapter where we focus on the areas in which you will absolutely be able to exert the most amount of influence. The decisions and strategies executed through these core functions will be informed by your strategic market analysis and enabled by your support activities. In our previous discussions, we have set ourselves up with the knowledge and infrastructure to be able to execute in the three areas of vendor management, project management, and sales. These directly lead to meaningful ways of differentiating yourselves from the competition by adding value to your clients. Note that we are using the terminology core functions rather than the more commonly used core competencies. This is quite intentional and represents an important distinction. We believe that the term competencies can too easily be assigned to individuals or groups of individuals within a company. We use the term functions because it is very important to remember that these are functions that can be carried out by anybody in an LSP. When we discuss the project management core function, for example, it doesn't necessarily mean that it is entirely carried out by a project manager. The functions of project management could be split between multiple people, regardless of their titles. Conversely, in a small company, it is entirely possible that one person, such as the owner, carries out all aspects of the core functions by himself. In both of these examples, the titles are not as important as the functions that are carried out. This is why we use the terminology core functions. If you prefer, though, you are free to use the terms functions and competencies interchangeably, so long as you keep in mind that we are talking about functions that are carried out and not individuals or groups that are doing them. We looked at the key players in the language services value chain back in the very first section of this book. It is comprised of the many different layers of LSP and CLPs that work together and add value to the end customer, the LSB. Figure 17 reproduces the language services value chain. Each player in the industry contributes to the language services value chain. Looking again at the value chain, we recognize that there is a whole lot of outsourcing going on, particularly when it comes to the language part of language services. There seems to be a very long distance between the actual buyers of language services at the top and the translators or CLPs at the bottom. Why are there so many steps, so many different companies between the buyer and the producers? We hope that by the end of the book, the answer to this question becomes abundantly clear. Each player in the language services value chain provides value-add services through their core function and marks up their services appropriately to add more value to the process. As the work flows up from the bottom of the value chain, the amount of accumulated value has increased, which justifies the higher price of the language services buyers. The end result is that the final product or service provided to the LSB is of much higher value than if they were to purchase directly from the translators. Any activities that are not core functions do not directly create value. but rather indirectly create value by supporting the core functions. The freelance translator creates value through translation, since that is their core function. The LSP creates value through vendor management, project management, and sales. Each step in the process adds additional value. This section further explores each of the three core functions and demonstrates how they add value to the language services value chain.